there is a complicated history between the Middle East, the West, and none of us, I think, should be immune from criticism in terms of specific policies. But the notion that the West is at war with Islam is an ugly lie.
That was the president speaking at the counter-extremism summit that happened last week in Washington. He has been accused by some of downplaying the threat from Islamic extremists like ISIS. Here now, the author of the book, Believer, My 40 Years in Politics, David Axelrod, former senior advisor to President Obama, and a man who has spent a lot of time with him, knows his mind very well. And congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
You say it's rising up the list of the bestsellers and doing great.
Yes, I'm sure it'll go to the top after this 15 minutes.
Absolutely, I'm sure it will too. All right, so let's dig right in here. The president talked about people, accusing us of being at war with Islam. I don't know anybody who thinks that we're at war with Islam. Where does he get that notion?
Well, there are those who, I think what he is saying is that 99.999% of Muslims in the world, and that's a quarter of the world, are not involved in extremism. And we need their alliance in this battle against these extremists. And so we don't want to be in a position where we're suggesting to them that we believe this is...
But nobody thinks we're at war with Islam. Everybody understands that we're at war with these groups, these Islamic extremist
groups. Well, I don't think... Martha, trust me, no one knows that more than the President of the United States, the guy who authorizes military action, the man who, from the time I got there, every single day was involved in authorizing actions to fight back against terrorism, who authorized the mission against Osama bin Laden. I don't think he needs any primer on the fact that we have that we're at war with terrorism here. The question is whether we stigmatize the entire faith and push off all those folks who are who don't read their scripture in the same way as these extremists.
I don't think anybody believes. I mean, Muslims are the people who are being killed in bigger numbers than any other religion. So they know that the war, that they are the victims of this more than anything.
I agree.
We're now in our fourth Secretary of Defense. A lot of people look at that and say that there have been differences of opinion in the Pentagon of how to deal with taking on this threat, that the president has been clear enough in his strategy that they have plans that are ready to go, that they want to arm the Kurds, that they wanted to arm the Syrian rebels for the past 2 years. So I guess what is the president's real strategy for defeating this enemy? And is it changing? Is his mind changing on that, do you think?
Well, I'm not there and I don't know. I'm not part of their policy discussions, but let me say that I think one of the strengths of the president, and you may disagree, is that he always asks the question, what next? Not just what is the first step, but the second step, the third step. I think it's important to think about where we're going here, and if we send in large numbers of troops, for example, what are the implications of that? How long are they going to be there? How do you establish, we've seen in Iraq that if you don't have an understanding between the different sects to coexist, you have huge problems. How do you instill some of that? And, so there are a lot of questions associated with the strategy that have to be asked. If you're the commander-in-chief and you're in charge. But let me ask you, if you were the commander-in-chief, what would you do?
Well, a couple of years ago, he said Assad must go. We watched the, hundreds of thousands of Syrians pouring across the border. The president stood there and said Assad must go. He doesn't seem to feel that way anymore. And so I would begin, I guess, by arming the Syrian rebels, which the president himself has said he wanted to do. But I think there's this reluctance.
Well, here's the issue. But this is you see, we sit here and we have the luxury of speculating about these things. The fact is that ISIS is at war with Assad. We are at war with ISIS. So it creates complications there. Obviously, we abhor what Assad has done to his own people, but we're focused on this threat of ISIS, where you started this interview, as we properly should be. So then, how do you handle that conflicting goals?
You say, what would I do? And I don't know. I'm just a lowly, anchor at a cable news channel.
You're a powerful voice.
But here's
People
the question.
listen to you every morning.
But here's the question.
Guidance.
What is the president's strategy? And I think, I've also listened to some voices say, where is the Winston Churchill?
The strategy,
where is the person who looks at the world in a comprehensive way and says they're now in 12 countries? And that doesn't include Boko Haram and al-Shabaab.
Would that the world were as simple as it's been in the past? The world is complicated. Part of the reason the world is complicated is you've got, tools. Terrorists have tools now that they never had before. Social media, for example.
Right.
So you have to fight that war on a whole different scale. So the world isn't what it was. The fact is that the president has mobilized 60 countries, and most importantly, the countries in the region to take some responsibility for security in that region. The fact that you see the Jordanians involved now, the Egyptians involved, is because America.
Why does he not? I'm sorry, why is there no meeting that's going on in Egypt right now or in Jordan with President Obama at that meeting, standing shoulder to shoulder with King Abdullah and General Sisi, so that there's no doubt in anyone's mind where the United States stands in this fight?
Martha, first of all, I have no doubt that there are constant communications between these countries about how to battle this threat. I don't think there's any doubt that the president has met periodically with King Abdullah. I don't think King Abdullah would say
he was in Washington begging for bullets. Did he get them?
But I don't think that the president and I don't think King Abdullah would sit here and tell you I don't have close and constant communication with the president of the United States.
All right, let's move on a little bit. I just want to ask you a quick question about Iran, because we just were talking to Ambassador Bolton, and he said it's clear in his mind that the president has sort of taken a more gentle route with Assad and with Putin because they want this deal with Iran to work. Do you believe, from your time in the White House, that the president feels that a deal with Iran is worth kind of allowing Putin and Assad a little bit of leverage in their own regions in order to get it?
I think the president has been. I traveled the world for 2 years with the president. I wrote a little bit about this, where he implored the world's leaders to join together in crippling sanctions against Iran, and we did. The world did. It was unprecedented. People scoffed at, maybe even on this set, scoffed at the possibility that you could put together such sanctions. Now you have people on this set and elsewhere calling for more sanctions because they've been so effective. Same thing with Russia. The president brought Europe together. A lot of people said Europe wouldn't tolerate strong sanctions against Russia because they get so much of their energy from Russia, but they did, and now the Russian economy is in shambles. So I don't know that that's gentle. I think that that's firm. The question is, are you being strategic about how you put pressure on these regimes?
Do you think
what is the alternative? If these talks fail, and I don't know whether they're going to succeed or not. If they fail, then you have to consider what are the next options. Are we prepared? Or is it now time then do we try and take military action when all of the generals suggest that that would only delay their program by a short period of time as well? So, what is the most effective way of trying to limit and stop their nuclear program? I mean, that's what he has to consider.
I mean, there's so many different elements here. We're talking about Iran and the Shiites and the Sunnis and ISIS. The president's been called an appeaser, that he's downplayed the threat of this group that has grown exponentially during the course of his presidency and now exists in 12 countries. Do you think all that caught him by surprise?
Well, I don't think anybody could predict precisely what's happened with ISIS. I don't think the intelligence community predicted precisely what's happened with ISIS. But I don't think the president has been caught off guard about the fact that there's a huge terrorist threat because he's been fighting it every day since he got to the White House.
All right. In the book, you talk about maybe one thing that the president wishes he could have done more, or maybe you wish he could have, and that was to bring people together in Washington. Why do you think that didn't happen?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons, but the main one is that we won a huge victory in 2008, swept in large Democratic majorities. And I think the Republican leadership made a strategic decision that was shrewd, if not admirable, that we had an economic crisis. He was going to have to make a series of decisions, each of which were as unpopular as they were necessary, like saving the American auto industry, and that they were going to make him live with those decisions and act on a partisan basis to solve them because it maximized their chances of doing better in the 2010 election. It was a shrewd strategy. They forced him to become a more partisan figure. They benefited from standing apart from these decisions. I don't think it was as I said, I don't think it was an admirable decision. And I think that's a large part of why we weren't able to come to terms.
Well, the book looks great. I know it's doing really well. Believer by David Axelrod. Thank you very much for coming in. It's always good to talk to you, David.
Nice
Thank
to
you
be
very
with you,
much.
Martha. Thank
Good
you.
luck with it.
Thank you.